Good morning. It is so good to be back. I love this time of year. It's getting cooler. The leaves are turning colors. It's wonderful. So Jen has shared a few messages lately about healing. So I wanted to talk about today a process we can use and keep in mind as we approach our own healing, because all of us have wounds here in this physical experience. We've all been damaged by our experience, our pain, our rejection. Our true nature, however, what we really are, is love and peace and joy and freedom. Always, always. Even if we've come into an experience where we've been deeply wounded and damaged, and we've all experienced it to some degree or another, our true nature is wellness of being, joy and love and peace and freedom and fullness of life. In fact, all things arise within life. I don't mean to make that sound abstract, but what I mean here is consciousness itself, the substance that is knowing the form, the objects, the places, the sense data, the pain, the up, the down, the night, the day. The whole human experience is occurring within, on and in consciousness itself. And that consciousness itself is synonymous with life with a capital L, and life with a capital L is full of vibrance and abundance of being and health and wellness. It is the very nature of its substance. It can't be truly harmed, damaged, wounded. It can't actually be scarred or harmed beyond healing. No, its very nature is wellness. Wellness beyond what we can even often experience here in the human condition. Okay, so now, but the thing is, though, we're in the human condition right now. So as consciousness, as spirit, we have come to engage a set of constraints. That means limitations, definitions. The human experience is actually a very alien state. I know that sounds strange because most of the time we only remember being human. It seems like all we are and all we've ever been. No, no. We are much deeper than the human experience, but we've really come deep into it, so deep into it. And now we think I'm just the human. I'm just the body. I'm just my problems, my circumstances. I'm just my pain, my traumas, all these traumas from the past. That's what I am now. We become so deeply associated into the form. What happens then is consciousness comes into limitations. Limitations trigger us in some way. We assign a meaning to them, and we buy into a meaning, a perception that is not in alignment with the truth of who we are. Our true nature is freedom and love and joy, but we buy into perceptions that are not that. It could be from anything. Like, oh, my parent took away my sandwich when I was 2. I don't have power to get it back. I'm pissed. Now I must be powerless. We buy into that perception. Or on much grander scales, we suffer abuse or trauma beyond imagining, and seems like the very world itself is reinforcing to us over and over that we are a certain way that's not peace and love and freedom and joy. And then we lose ourselves in that perception, and when we do, we experience fear. Fear just means the part of us that rises up and says, I hate this, I reject this, I don't like this, I'm going to push this away, I'm going to bury it down. So we can reject circumstance itself, we can reject a feeling, a pain, even just an emotion. We might reject that. But often we reject the meaning that we've put on to the neutral circumstances that arise. And as we reject them, we block the flow. So you could think of life as like a river. It's just full of strength and movement of life energy. But when we reject, when we buy into fear, when we reject, it's like putting little blocks in the river. I'm building little dams. We don't know we're doing it, okay? Anytime we experience something that's too big for ourselves, see, that's the thing. We don't bury it because it's easy. We bury it because it's hard. We bury it because there's some fear that's been triggered that seems bigger than we are, some trauma that seems deeper than we are. So we bury it. We stick it under the rug. I can't face that. I can't feel it. That's just the way life is. Our ego comes up with all sorts of stories. Oh, that's just life. Oh, that's just the way you are. Oh, now look, no, you have value because you can do this thing, or you own this thing, or you have this power, whatever. All sorts of egoic stories arise from attempting to ignore or cover up that thing we buried under the rug, that trauma. We lock it away painfully deep down, and it's still there. And then it causes little seismic eruptions to the surface in the body, or in the emotions, or in the mind over the course of a lifetime. That energy then gets locked deep in our physical body and our energy body. So I'll draw a personal example here. When I was 22 years old, I experienced a trauma that was very intense for me. Before I had come to the physical experience, I remember accepting that this was very likely and actually being excited that it would occur, even though at the time it was very much not fun or something that I could have accepted. So physically, what happened on the surface is I had a significant life change. My parents had divorced. A 5-year romantic relationship had just ended. I just graduated college. I had no income. I had school loans. I had no way of making a living at all. I decided to go back to China because I had studied in Beijing when I was in college. So I went to a city called Chengdu to teach English. It was very hot, and I had celiac disease and didn't know it. So I was malnourished, and I was in a jungle city. I had a heat stroke on a Saturday morning. They rushed me by ambulance to the hospital, where I stayed for 4 days because my heart was doing weird things because my potassium was so low. So they gave me bag after bag after bag of potassium. I don't know exactly what happens, but I theorize there's way, way too much potassium. And I ended up getting worse and worse and worse. I had a neurological burn, an agony in my nervous system that was beyond description. I could not escape it. I retired to my hotel room. I finally escaped the hospital, knowing that it was making me worse. And I spent a week in my hotel room where the power would go. It was 110 degrees in this city. And the power would go out every few hours from brownouts, and the heat would rise. But my body could no longer respond to heat since the heat stroke. I couldn't sweat. So all that happened to me was I just got sick. I just felt worse. So I laid there in this room waiting for time after time of the heat to come back over 100 degrees, where I would just feel the most terrible agony I can describe. And I felt completely powerless to escape it. So I became traumatized. I decided, you know what, I'm going to break myself in half psychologically so I never have to feel this. And I just completely shut off my life up until that point, the age of 22. It was so traumatizing. When I got back, I had post-traumatic stress. And I know people usually associate it with war experiences. For me, it was a health experience that it was. I can't describe the pain that went on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I could not escape it. When you cannot escape pain, it is very, very, very challenging. Through years of counseling, to make a very long story short, I worked through layers and layers of the trauma and fear until I finally arrived again to this moment in the hospital bed in Chengdu that was the worst moment of my fear, where I was experiencing the deepest vibration of, I cannot escape agony, and I am too proud to suffer. I reject this. I can't describe it. It's a quality, a state. I now know that that is precisely what I came to Earth to experience and integrate and heal. We all have our traumas and our fears. In this case, for me, it was buying into a perception that was so deeply not in alignment with the truth of who I am. I am a being of freedom, and so are you. I'm a being of health and wellness and joy. There is nothing to fear, but I believe there was so deeply that I split my own psyche. That's what fear does. And there is an incredible opportunity in the depth of that contrast. You know, that's a really hard pill for the ego to swallow, because when we're traumatized and we're full of fear, we don't like it. Don't tell me there's opportunity in this. I'm pissed, right? No. The depths of contrast, even that contrast for me, And all the trauma and pain we've experienced are a gift. So that immortal spirit that cannot be harmed and cannot know lack of freedom can engage it to its very depth, integrate that experience, and grow and expand through it. So how do we do that, right? How do we actually find that crap down underneath? Because here's what happens. The ego covers it up with 700 layers of protection, maybe 10,000 layers. It gets so deeply buried, you can't even locate what you're afraid of anymore. All you know is you don't feel good, or you're pissed, or you're angry. You don't know what it is. You just know you're not feeling fullness of being. I want to draw a quick distinction here between pain, the terms pain and suffering. Pain, physical pain, is a sensation. It's neutral. Doesn't actually have a negative meaning yet, but our consciousness immediately goes, oh, I have a headache. That's bad. Signs of meaning. Suffering arises from the meaning. In my case, in the hospital bed in China, the actual sensation was numbness throughout my body and a terrible burning sensation in my nervous system. That's the pain. Suffering is the great meaning I put on it and the great rejection that I summoned up. I want to draw that distinction because pain's going to happen in the human experience. We're all going to get stung by a bee, step on a nail, have the person next to us insult us or hurt us or abandon us or even abuse us. It's going to happen to some degree, sometimes very varying degrees. But we're all going to experience pain. Suffering, however, is the vast majority of the negative that we experience in this life. The vast, vast majority of everything negative we experience is the meaning that we put on it, the suffering, not the pain itself. But when we put blockages in there, we are rejecting that flow of life I mentioned. And so if we really want to go and find that root and process it and heal it, we have to do the opposite. Well, I don't have to do it. Acceptance. Exactly. Acceptance. Acceptance? No, I'm ticked. No, the ego's upset. It doesn't know. And then you know what the ego will do then is it'll say, okay, I'll accept in order to get rid of this thing that's bothering me. That's not acceptance. That's still rejection. You can't trick your deepest intent. Whatever your actual intent is, that's what you're doing, no matter what games you're playing with yourself. Acceptance is actually a choice to meet and accept this moment. It is a choice of willingness. That's the key. Willingness to own who you are, including your own pain. No one else is responsible for your own pain. I know you've been abused, or I know you've suffered trauma. We've all had to different degrees, like I said, and sometimes it's a lot harder than other times. I'm not saying that either, but it's always your choice how you respond. Your wellness of being is your choice. So we need to be willing to own who we are, be willingness to be who we are. That's so hard when the ego says, no, I need to do this thing. I need to be this way. I need to be healthy. I need to be vibrant. I need to perform this service. You can be exactly how you are. It's fine. You can be wounded. You can be sick. You can be old. You can be dying. It's okay. You don't have to be anything. So you're allowed to be exactly who you are now in this moment. It's a willingness to go towards what has previously been too difficult to face. I'm going to just a little cheat sheet here. Your consciousness is actually deeper than your deepest crap. Your deepest crap is buried because it feels too big to face. How about the big one, death? I don't know what's going to happen after death. Is there really life after death? I have no evidence. I don't see any evidence that's, on the surface. It's what it seems. So we don't even acknowledge to ourselves, we're terrified of the unknown of death. That's okay. Acknowledge it. Go see. Wow, I'm blind. I feel terror. That's okay. Be willingness to go towards it. Even be willing to be limited or powerless or even in pain. There was a phrase written on the chalkboard behind my counselor's office when I first went to her. It said, power lies in accepting powerlessness. At the time, it just ticked off my ego. Don't tell me that BS. I'm really upset. I'm very traumatized. I don't want to read that, is what the ego says. No, truly, when we accept our powerlessness, we're not trying to go get power, but by accepting it, the true power rises up all on its own. The true power, which is life itself, that cannot be squashed. It rises back up because through acceptance, guess what? Acceptance removes the blockage from the river. And life flows again. Not because we're trying to get it to flow again, but because you know what? We're not saying no anymore. When you reject a part of your life, you're rejecting life. How can you live with fullness and abundance of being if you reject life? That's why it's about being present with what is here now, feeling it all the way, knowing it all the way. Not rejecting, but acknowledging with open eyes and a willingness to feel and go, you know what? I feel powerless. You know what? I have pain. You know what? This person hurt me. You know what? I have grief. You know, maybe somebody died in your life and it's still there. That's okay. Allow it to come up. Now, okay, so now how do we do that, right? Because it's buried so deep down. Okay, this is going to sound simple, but it's really important. We just start with what's in this now. Okay, so what I mean is think metaphorically like the trauma is like the roots of a bush or a tree. And then it grows up and the ego creates all these branches. And then by the time you're an adult, especially, you got all these nice layers of branch to protect you so you can function, you can work, you can ignore all that pain down there. Just stay up in the leaves, please. The leaves at the height of the tree, whatever's arisen in this moment, you'll feel it in your body and your emotions. You'll know it. So what you start with is just what's negative now. What negative thing do I feel right now in my body or in my emotions? What is the thing I feel that I'm rejecting? And we allow that. Doesn't have to be the whole picture all at once. Yeah, you could do the whole picture all at once. It only takes 5 seconds, actually. But we can't actually practically get there. So what we practically accept is just this moment. Exactly what has arisen in this moment. And when you shift that quality of intention from unconscious rejection to conscious willingness and ownership and allowance, that subtle shift of intention at the branches high up with what's arising right now causes the lower level stuff to start rising up automatically because your being knows that wellness is your true nature and it will work with you and your psyche will rise up to you as you're ready, piece by piece. Oh, you processed that little piece. Okay. And then usually you'll feel some healing, some joy of some kind, but then maybe a couple weeks later, something even darker rises up. That's okay. It's called shadow work. It means allowing that darkness to rise up. And then you face and feel just that. Your willingness in this moment changes the momentum and is a path to healing. And when you face and feel something in this moment is the same as all moments. Okay, so this is a little bit abstract here, but all the experience of sequence is occurring within the one now. The one now with a capital N. So if you face your crap in this now, you are doing it in all the nows. So like when I came into this experience, this physical experience, to experience trauma and to experience processing that fear and going back to that hospital bed in Chengdu and feeling that absolute agony and pain, the moment I did that and it felt much bigger than me, I did it for all the nows. And then we keep that. When the physical body dies and you move on because you're not human, that's not going to last. This is just a temporary excursion. When the excursion is over and you're on the other side and the limitations, the great limitations of being human have been dropped because they're extreme. The fullness of your being can be seen and felt and known even more. And then you metaphorically can say, I did that. I understand powerlessness now. I understand shame or whatever it is. But you also now understand its opposite that much more. You feel it, you know it, you've mastered it by allowing it, by experiencing it. Quality of intention in the now is the key. So to put all that very simply, feel it to heal it. Now I'm going to say a brief prayer. Spirit of abundant life, of which we are all a part. We give you thanks that you are with us this day and that you love us and sustain us through all of our great traumas and fears. Help us to see them clearly and help us to be strengthened that we might meet our unhealed portions and that we might do so without fear, but with boldness of feeling, boldness of alertness and presence. Guide us as we do that, that we might use the physical experience for all it was meant to be. Help us to know, to shine, and to actualize our true, loving, and joyful natures this day and all the days to come. And thank you for your unconditional love that endures always and surpasses everything we understand and sustains us, no matter what we may experience and no matter how deep our wounds. Amen.